Progressive School. Students, in my today's video, I'll explain you the second poem from First Flight, that is The Fire and Ice, written by Robert Frost. He was an American poet. He was born in 1874 in San Francisco, California, and he died in 1963 in Boston. This poem is written and published in 1920, shortly after the World War I. Before explanation of the poem, I'll give you the brief introduction about the poem. Here, the poet expresses the idea about the end of the world. He says the one day, or we can say someday, the world will end either by fire or by ice. Here in this poem, the poet has compared the fire and ice with the destructive emotions of human beings. He compared the fire with desire and ice with hatred. The poet also tells us that how humans let their emotions, let their desires rule over them. They have no control over their desires, which leads to destructions. Similarly, the hatred among each other will also lead the destruction of the world. So now I'll explain the poem line by line. We'll discuss the poetic devices as well and the word meaning. Let's proceed the poem.
Fire and Ice is one of the most popular poems of the Robert Frost. It is a symbolic poem. The speaker of the poem is dwelling on the two theories for the end of the world. It was written shortly after the First World War and published in 1920. The poet is inspired by Dante's Inferno. The poet shows a parallel between the 9 lines of the poem with the 9 rings of hell and makes the structure of the poem. It is a short poem which consists of 2 stanzas and 9 lines. Here Dante is an Italian poet and Inferno is an epic poem. In Inferno, the poet has described his journey through hell. Hatred and power are the major themes of the poem. The poet has discussed the features of human emotions. He uses the symbol of fire and ice to show desires and hatred. The poem depicts that human emotions can be destructive when we lose our control over them. They can destroy our conscience and lead us to problems, conflicts, and grudges. The central idea around which the entire poem revolves is that only love, equality, mutual understanding, and sympathy for one and all can help in establishing peace on the earth. The poet mentions that both fire and ice can bring probable end to this world. The poet talks about how fire represents desires and can therefore be a cause of the end of the world. He also mentions ice as a second issue to symbolize that the coldness and indifferences towards one another will also be enough to bring an end to this world. In this poem, there are only 2 new words. The first is perish, it means die, and the second is suffice. It means be sufficient or enough. And now I will explain you the entire poem. In this poem, the poet has discussed about the 2 theories behind the earth's destruction. How will the earth end? Either with fire or ice. So here we start. Some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. So according to the poet, some people believe that the earth will end in fire. Here fire means excessive heat and the temperature of earth core will be increased too high, then everything will be burned because the fire has the intense power to destroy the things rapidly. Some say in ice. On the other hand, some scientists or we can say some people believe the earth will end in ice. It means the temperature of earth will be too low, then everything will be freezed and all the things will be demised due to numbness. This poem is a symbolic poem. The poet uses the fire as a symbol of desire and the ice as a symbol of hatred. You know student, if the fire is under control, it's useful. But once it is beyond control, it leads to the consequences of disaster. Similarly, the desire also gives happiness to some extent. When it becomes obsession, then it also leads to destruction. Moving to the next line, from what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. So, here in these lines, the poet says, with his own experiences, he strongly favored the people who says earth will end in fire, because he has seen the uncontrolled and unending desires like greed, anger, power, and bloodlust. He has experienced that man has become so cruel due to these desires. So he strongly believes the earth will end in fire. But if it had to be perished twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. In these lines, the poet has changed his opinion. He says, if the earth will end twice, then hatred is also enough to destroy the world. Because he has seen enough hatred like coldness of heart, lack of emotions, insensitivity among people. Hence, he says that ice is also sufficient to destroy the world. In other words, hatred can be the great tool of destruction of the world. So, students, through this poem, the poet wants to give message intense greed of man for power and lust. In contrast, hatred in heart, both are capable to destroy the world. If we have to save the world, we need to nurture brotherhood, love, and tenderness among our fellow beings to live in harmony. So, students, here in this poem, we have seen the poet has used two different symbols for fire and ice to depict how desires and hatred are equally destructive in their own way. Summary of the poem. Fire and Ice is a symbolic poem. In this poem, the poet has discussed about two theories behind the destruction of the world. According to the poet, some scientists believe that the world will perish in fire, while others convinced that coming ice age will destroy all things on the earth's surface. Instead of maintaining a scientific perspective on these theories, the poet has linked these natural elements with the emotional elements. He compares fire with desire and ice with hatred. The poet says he is in favor of those people who say the world will end in fire. This is because he has seen the uncontrolled and inevitable desires like greed, anger, lust for power, and blood. These desires are similar to fire, so this fire can destroy the world. On the other hand, the poet says if this world has to be destroyed twice, the ice is also sufficient to destroy the world. Here, ice is symbolized with hatred. He has seen the hatred, insensitivity, lack of emotions, or coldness of heart among humans. So he concluded that ice or hatred can also be the strong cause of destruction of the world. Now I will explain the poetic devices used in the poem. First poetic device is assonance, the repetition of vowel sounds in the same line. I hold with those who favor fire. Here is the repetition of O. That means it is a assonance poetic device. Same in the first line, some say the word will end in fire. Here, I is also repeating, will end in fire. Here is the repetition of I. The next is alliteration, the repetition of consonant sound at the beginning of the words in the same line. I hold with those who favor fire. Here is the repetition of F sound in this line, so it is a alliteration. Imagery. It is used to make readers perceive things. Some say the word will end in fire. So here we are visualizing in our mind how would the earth end. The next poetic device is symbolism. In this poem, fire is the symbol for desire and ice is the symbol for hatred. And the next is anaphora. It refers to the repetition of a word or expression in the first part of some verses or we can say repetition of words at the beginning of consecutive lines. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. Here in first two lines we can see the first two words are repeating. So this is anaphora. Now I'll explain the rhyme scheme in the poem. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. Here the fire is not rhyming with ice. So fire is A and ice is B. Desire is rhyming with fire, then again it is A. Fire is also rhyming with desire and fire, then again it is A. In next stanza, but it had to perish twice. So twice is rhyming with ice. So here it is B. I think I know enough of hate. Hate is not rhyming with any word. So it will be C. To say that for destruction of ice. Ice is rhyming with twice. So it will be B. It also great. Great is rhyming with hate. So it will be C. And would suffice. Suffice is rhyming with twice, rhyming with ice. So it will be B. So the rhyme scheme here in this poem is A, B, A, B, C, B, C, B. The next poetic device is enjambment. In second stanza, last three lines, there is no any punctuation mark. To say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. So here we can say there is no any punctuation mark. So the continuation of the lines without any punctuation marks is called enjambment. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you like it, please subscribe my channel.